You know, usually when we talk about buying a ticket to a live event, there's like this certain unwritten contract you enter into.
Right.
Think about going to a Broadway show. You save up your money,
Mm.
you pick the date months in advance.
Mhm.
You know, you get dressed up and you walk into the theater.
Very excited.
Exactly.
Mhm.
You sit down, you get handed the playbill, and then right there in the middle, a little white slip of paper just sort of flutters out onto your lap. And it says, tonight, the lead role will be played by the understudy.
Oh, man. Yeah, and it's just a completely deflating feeling
Totally.
because visually, audibly, I mean, it's still the exact same play, right? The script hasn't changed a single word. The set design is identical.
Yeah.
But your heart just kind of sinks because the fundamental reason you bought the ticket, like the core draw, has been totally pulled out from under you.
Exactly. Because you didn't just pay for the narrative.
Yeah.
You paid to see the star perform the narrative.
Right. You wanted that transcendent talent, not just some competent replacement.
Yeah. And right now, if you look at the landscape of the modern NBA, fans are finding an awful lot of those little white slips of paper in their metaphorical playbills.
That is a really great way to put it.
Because the grueling reality of the 82-game regular season is, well, it's literally physically breaking the game's biggest stars. And the league is handing you, the fan, the understudy on a nightly basis.
Yeah, which is just bad for everyone.
It is. So today, we're looking at a blueprint to fix it. We're diving into this really brilliant analytical piece titled After Further Review on the Play.
It's a great read.
It really is. And it doesn't just, complain about the load management issue. It actually breaks down the game's underlying systems to propose a whole structural overhaul, like what they call a remix of how the sport operates.
Right, a complete rethinking of the calendar.
Exactly. We are going to explore how altering the total game count impacts the massive financial ecosystem of the league. We'll look at the really delicate balance between business stability and player health.
Which is the big sticking point.
Right. And ultimately, we want to understand how tearing down parts of the schedule might be the absolute only way to rebuild the experience for you, the viewer.
Well, to really get into the mechanics of this proposed overhaul, I think we need to establish the core conflict right out of the gate.
Let's do it.
Because the debate surrounding load management, it usually gets trapped in this incredibly frustrating false binary.
Oh, for sure. You hear it on sports talk radio constantly.
Exactly. People frame it as either, an endurance test that players just need to toughen up for, or it's a walk in the park where everyone gets a participation trophy.
The whole players back in my day argument.
Right. But the analysis we're looking at today makes it really clear that the situation is this highly complex tug of war.
Yeah.
You have four crucial pillars holding up the entire multi-billion-dollar structure of the league. You've got health, money, history, and the fans.
Okay, health, money, history, fans.
Exactly. And if you prioritize health and just, slash the schedule blindly, the money pillar collapses.
Yeah.
But if you prioritize history and force everyone to grind through 82 games like it's 1985, well, the health pillar crumbles. The stars get hurt, and then the fans abandon the product.
So it's like a closed-loop system where every single action has an immediate massive reaction.
Precisely. You pull one lever, three other things break.
And to figure out how to balance those pillars, we really have to accurately diagnose the disease here. Because the source text identifies the core crisis immediately, and it's an important distinction.
Very important.
The league's biggest issue isn't a lack of talent. It's not an entertainment problem. It is purely and simply a player availability problem.
And that distinction is paramount because if we look at the raw skill level across the board, the NBA has literally never been more talented.
Oh, totally. The shooting ranges alone are insane.
Exactly. The ball handling abilities of 7-footers, the defensive versatility, the sheer athletic capability is just staggering compared to any previous era.
Yeah, it's like we're watching aliens play sometimes.
Yeah. Right. But despite that golden age of talent, there's this pervasive underlying feeling among fans that the regular season just lacks weight.
It feels inconsequential.
Yeah, and the analysis points out exactly why. It's not that the games themselves are poorly played or inherently bad. It's that the best players on the planet just aren't consistently on the floor to play them.
Which goes back to the understudy problem.
Exactly.
Because if you tune in on a random Tuesday night in February, or worse, if you shell out like $400 to take your family to the arena.
Which is not cheap.
No. And those are tickets you probably bought way back in November. There is absolutely no guarantee that the superstar plastered on the billboard outside the stadium is actually going to lace up his sneakers that night.
Zero guarantee. And when the stars aren't consistently playing, the product feels fundamentally inconsistent.
Yeah, and as a consumer, you just stop trusting the product.
Exactly. It creates this massive disconnect in consumer behavior. What we see happening is passive viewing entirely replacing active viewing.
Unpack that a little. Passive versus active viewing.
Well, if you, as a fan, don't have certainty about who is going to play, you are simply not going to dedicate 2.5 hours of your Tuesday evening to sit down and watch a game live.
Right, you're not going to organize your schedule around it.
No. Instead, you'll just, open your phone on Wednesday morning and watch a 3-minute highlight package on social media.
Which is what everyone does now.
Right. And from a business standpoint, that transition from active live viewing to passive delayed consumption, that is a slow-moving disaster for a sports league.
Because the money is in the live broadcast.
Exactly. The television networks, the advertisers, the entire broadcast model relies on live appointment viewing. Highlights on a phone don't pay the multi-billion-dollar TV bills. Live eyeballs do.
Okay, but I want to push back on this a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Because the narrative around this is usually so toxic online. When we see a star sitting on the bench in, custom streetwear while his team plays a game, the immediate fan reaction is usually visceral anger.
Oh, yeah. People lose their minds.
Right. We blame the players. The dialogue instantly devolves into calling this generation soft, pointing out that players in the 90s played all 82 games, flew commercial, and never complained.
The old reliable talking points.
Exactly. So my question is it actually fair to place the blame on the players? Or is the 82-game structure, given the modern pace of play, just a biological impossibility at this point?
That is the exact tension the source implicitly wrestles with when discussing the physical toll of the modern game. And it requires us to really look past the nostalgia.
Okay.
You cannot compare the physiological demands of a game in 1995 to a game in 2025. It's apples and oranges.
Because of the pace.
The pace, the space, everything. If you look at the spatial tracking data, like those optical tracking cameras they have mounted in the catwalks of every modern arena.
Tracking every movement.
Yeah. The geometry of the sport is completely unrecognizable. 30 years ago, you had offensive systems built around dumping the ball into the low post.
The spacing was super compressed.
Incredibly compressed. 3, maybe 4 players were essentially static on the weak side of the floor for entire possessions, just standing there.
Wow, yeah.
So the total distance traveled per game was lower, but more importantly, the velocity and explosiveness of that movement was significantly lower.
Because the floor wasn't stretched out to 28 feet with guys shooting from the logo.
Exactly. Today, the floor is stretched to its absolute limits. Defenders are constantly closing out on shooters at the three-point line, then navigating complex high pick and rolls near half court, and then recovering all the way back to the paint.
It's just nonstop sprinting.
And think about the biomechanical load of a sudden deceleration on a hardwood floor.
Oh, that sounds brutal.
It is. When a 240-pound athlete sprints to the perimeter and has to stop on a dime to contest a step-back 3, that sudden deceleration sends massive shockwaves through the body.
Like the knees and ankles?
The patellar tendon, the knees, the ankles, the Achilles, all of it. Doing that once is fine.
Sure.
But doing it 40 times a night, 82 nights a year, while flying through 3 time zones every week, it creates a massive physiological deficit.
The body just can't keep up.
Exactly. The human body, specifically the soft tissue, simply cannot recover fast enough. So the medical staffs have to step in.
They're looking at the data?
They look at the biometric data, they see the massively elevated injury risk, and they force the player to sit.
So it's not the player being soft.
Not at all. It's about preventative maintenance in an environment that pretty much guarantees physical breakdown if you aren't careful.
Okay, so if we accept that premise, that the 82-game schedule is actively breaking the players and diluting the product, the obvious, seemingly brilliant solution that constantly gets thrown around on social media is just a massive reduction in the schedule.
Right, the 60-game season.
Exactly. The text brings this up as the ultimate athletic utopia. A 60-game season. And honestly, it sounds like the perfect fantasy, doesn't it?
Oh, from a pure basketball standpoint, absolutely.
Right. You cut out 22 games. Suddenly, you have eliminated the grueling back-to-backs. You have maximal rest for the players.
And the quality of play would skyrocket.
Yes, because mathematically, every single game holds incredibly high stakes because there are fewer of them. The scarcity goes up, so the importance goes up. And you get peak physical performance every night.
On paper, purely from a physiological and competitive standpoint, the 60-game model is an absolute dream for the athletic purist.
It fixes the health pillar entirely.
It solves it completely.
Yeah.
But the analysis provides a massive, unavoidable reality check with a very simple phrase.
Which is?
The business side makes it complicated.
Oh, money.
Always. And this is where we have to stop talking about basketball as just a game and start looking at it as a deeply entrenched, highly complex financial ecosystem.
Because a 60-game season fundamentally ignores the money and history pillars.
Exactly. It's a fantasy because of the finances.
Well, I really want to dig into this financial ecosystem because I think when casual fans talk about cutting 22 games, they usually just think about giving guys a night off. They don't see the massive ripple effect.
Right. They just see less wear and tear.
But mechanically, we are talking about slashing more than a quarter of the league's entire operational inventory.
Precisely. Let's look at the actual mechanics of basketball-related income, or BRI.
Okay, what exactly is BRI for people who don't know?
BRI is the central nervous system of the league's economy. It is essentially this massive bucket where all the gross revenue goes.
Everything the league makes.
Pretty much. Ticket sales, luxury suite leases, parking concessions, national television rights, local broadcast deals, merchandising, corporate sponsorships, all of it goes into the BRI bucket.
Got it.
And by the terms of the collective bargaining agreement, the players and the owners split that giant bucket roughly 50-50.
Okay, so it's a shared revenue model.
Exactly. So when you talk about cutting 22 games, you aren't just talking about a billionaire owner making slightly less profit at the end of the year.
You are talking about shrinking the entire bucket for everyone.
Yes, because you're instantly wiping out 11 home games for every single franchise in the league.
Wow. 11 nights of zero revenue for the arena.
Right, and you aren't just losing the gate receipts for those 11 nights. Think about the ripple effect. Let's talk about the local regional sports networks, the RSNs.
Right, the local cable channels that show the games.
Yeah, those cable networks pay tens, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars to the teams for the exclusive rights to broadcast those games locally in their market.
That's a huge chunk of change.
It's massive, and they pay that premium specifically because they need massive amounts of live inventory to fill their programming schedule.
Because they have to justify those high subscription fees to the cable providers all winter long.
Exactly. From October to April, they need content. If a team suddenly says, hey, we're only giving you 30 home games to broadcast instead of 41, you violate the minimum inventory thresholds in those broadcast contracts.
Oh, wow. So the contracts are actually tied to a specific number of games.
Absolutely. The RSNs will demand massive prorated refunds, or they'll just tear up the contracts entirely because the value proposition is gone.
And that pain, the loss of that local TV money, that trickles down immediately to the players, doesn't it?
Immediately. Because remember, the salary cap isn't just a random number the league pulls out of a hat.
Right. It's tied to the BRI bucket.
It is mathematically tied directly to it. If local television revenue plummets and gate receipts vanish by 25%, the salary cap literally collapses.
And so a superstar player might love the idea of a 60-game schedule for his knees.
Oh, he'd love it right up until his agent calls. The agent is going to say, hey, great news on the knees, but the maximum allowable contract just dropped from $250 million to $180 million.
Because the league's gross revenue took a multi-billion-dollar hit.
Exactly. And it goes even beyond the billionaires and the millionaires. Think about the local city economies around the arenas.
Like the bars and restaurants.
Yeah. The arena workers, the ushers, the security staff, the food vendors, the parking attendants. These people and businesses rely on those 41 dates for their livelihood.
That's true. They lose a quarter of their shifts.
Right. Slashing 25% of the schedule is a violent economic shock to the entire system.
Okay, but wait, let me push back on the economics of this a little bit.
Go for it.
Because we're talking about supply and demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a basic economic principle. If a 60-game season creates a premium, high-quality product where every game feels like an event, the stars are always playing, and television ratings naturally skyrocket because of the scarcity.
I see where you're going.
Couldn't the league theoretically just charge more for that product?
The scarcity model.
Right. You make the live games scarcer, they inherently become more valuable. So you charge the networks more per game for the TV rights, you raise the ticket prices, and the revenue bucket stays the exact same size. It's just filled with higher margin inventory.
It's a really great theoretical question.
Or is the sheer volume of 82 games just too deeply embedded in the business model for that kind of transition to actually work?
It's the latter. While the scarcity creates value, economic theory absolutely holds weight. I mean, we see it with the NFL, right? Every game is an event.
Yeah, NFL games are massive.
But transitioning a massive volume-based legacy business like the NBA to a scarcity model isn't like just flipping a switch.
You can't just do it overnight.
No, you can't just tear the system down overnight and hope the math magically balances out. The source text makes this crystal clear. It notes that the league simply does not need, and frankly cannot survive, a complete reset like that.
So the math just doesn't work out to replace 22 games of revenue.
Not seamlessly. Yes, you might be able to charge the national television networks, like an ESPN or a TNT, a higher premium for a 60-game product, because national ratings would theoretically be higher.
Right.
But national TV money is only one piece of the pie.
Yeah.
A higher national TV deal does not replace the lost local revenue for a team in a smaller market.
Because they still lose those 11 nights of local ticket sales.
Exactly. A team in a mid-sized city relies heavily on those 41 nights of local gate receipts and local sponsorships. You cannot increase local ticket prices by 25% in a single off-season just to offset the missing games.
You'd completely price out the local fan base. People would riot.
Exactly. History matters.
Yeah.
The financial infrastructure was built over decades on a volume model. You cannot violently pull the money pillar out to satisfy the health pillar without collapsing the entire roof.
Wow. Okay, so if we take a step back, we were kind of stuck in this incredibly frustrating, seemingly intractable limbo.
It really is a bind.
Because the 82-game season is physically breaking the players, forcing the medical staffs to step in, which leads to an inconsistent product that alienates the fans.
Right?
But the 60-game fantasy mathematically breaks the bank, collapses the salary cap, and destabilizes the entire local business ecosystem of the sport.
Yep.
It feels like an unsolvable puzzle.
It absolutely feels that way. Until you look at the central proposition of the analysis we're studying today.
Okay, the way out.
Because the authors argue there is a highly calculated middle ground. We don't need a violent reset. We need a smarter surgical balance.
Which brings us to the remix.
Exactly, the remix.
The text proposes that the sweet spot, the structural compromise that actually balances all four of those pillars we talked about, lies somewhere around 65 to 70 games.
Yes, and this is where the real structural engineering begins. By dropping somewhere between 12 to 17 games from the schedule, you are attempting to thread a very specific needle.
You're trying to achieve that delicate balance between health and wealth.
Yeah.
Let's visualize this for a second because I think the analogy helps. Think about it like pruning a massive, sprawling oak tree.
I like this.
Right. So the current 82-game schedule is this huge, overgrown tree. Some of the branches are just dying. They aren't getting any sunlight. They're dead weight.
Those are the random Tuesday night games in Charlotte where 3 superstars are sitting out for load management.
Exactly. Total dead weight. Now, if you try to fix the tree by chopping the whole thing down and planting a brand new 60-game sapling, you destroy the entire root system.
And the root system is the financial ecosystem.
Right. The local economies, the broadcast contracts we just broke down. It takes decades to grow those roots back, if they ever grow back at all.
It's too destructive.
But with a 65 to 70 game remix, you aren't chopping down the tree. You are getting up on a ladder and surgically trimming the excess dying branches.
Just removing the bad parts.
Exactly. Those 12 to 17 games are the dead weight. You prune them away so the core trunk, the premium matchups, the health of the players, the fan interest can grow stronger and healthier.
That is an incredibly apt analogy for how this transition protects business stability. Because let's look at the mechanics of that pruning.
Okay, how does the math work on 68 games, for example?
Well, if you keep the season at, say, 68 games, you maintain the current financial model to a much, much larger degree than that drastic 60-game drop.
Because you're only losing 7 home games instead of 11.
Right. A franchise loses 7 home dates. The hit to local gate revenue and local broadcast minimums is painful, yes, but it is manageable.
It's not a death blow.
Exactly. It's a deficit that can actually be offset by the slight increase in scarcity we talked about earlier.
So here's where the scarcity model actually works.
Yes, in moderation. Maybe you raise ticket prices slightly across the remaining 34 home games. Nothing crazy, but enough.
And maybe the national broadcast partners pay a slight premium because the product is cleaner and more reliable.
Precisely. You avoid the complete chaotic reset of team finances. You keep the player's salary cap relatively stable while making a truly meaningful concession to the physical realities of the sport.
And crucially, by stabilizing the finances this way, you are fundamentally stabilizing the actual product you are selling to the consumer.
Because the stars are actually playing.
Right, because by dropping those 14 games, you are ensuring that your premium product, the star players, is actually available for the games that remain.
Right.
You aren't selling the understudy anymore.
Precisely. You ease the physical toll just enough. You aren't removing the physical challenge of professional sports. I mean, playing 68 high-intensity basketball games is still a massive, massive athletic achievement.
I guess so, yeah.
But you are removing the gratuitous wear and tear. You are keeping the business structure largely intact while directly, aggressively addressing the biggest issue alienating the fans, player availability.
But the analysis is very clear that just waving a magic wand, changing the total number of games on a spreadsheet and hoping for the best isn't the whole solution.
No, the total number is just the starting point.
Right. It's not just about how many games are played. It is entirely about how those remaining games are scheduled on the calendar.
The logistics of it.
Exactly. Which brings us to the actual structural engineering of this remix.
Right. The proposal explicitly states that the league must eliminate unnecessary back-to-backs and build the schedule with deliberate intention.
And we really need to pause and unpack what an unnecessary back-to-back actually represents physically, because it is the primary driver of the load management era.
It is the absolute root of the problem.
So let's absolutely talk about the mechanics of the back-to-back. Because if you are a casual fan or even a diehard fan who has just never played at a high level, you might look at a schedule, see your team play in Dallas on a Tuesday night, and then see they play in New Orleans on a Wednesday night.
And you think, what's the big deal?
Exactly. Your initial thought is, okay, these are the most highly conditioned, genetically gifted athletes on the planet. They're getting paid $40 million a year. They can run around a wooden floor for a few hours, 2 days in a row.
That is the common refrain. I work a double shift at the factory. They can play basketball.
Right.
But it completely ignores the physiological reality of circadian rhythms, sleep science, and central nervous system recovery.
It's not just the running on the court.
It's the entire sequence of events around the game. Imagine a player finishing a highly intense, physically taxing contest in Dallas at, say, 10:30 at night.
Okay.
Their blood is absolutely pumping with adrenaline and cortisol. They then have to do mandatory media availability, get icing, and preliminary treatment from the training staff.
Taking ice baths, getting taped up.
Exactly. They finally get on a team bus around midnight, drive to the airport, and board a chartered flight.
So it's already past midnight.
Yeah. They fly through the night, landing in New Orleans at 2:30 in the morning. They get on another bus, arrive at a hotel at 3:30 a.m., and then they have to try to chemically wind down their central nervous system enough to actually fall asleep.
Which is almost impossible when you're that wired.
Exactly. So they wake up a few hours later, their bodies are completely flooded with lactic acid, their sleep architecture is totally destroyed.
And they have to play another NBA game that night.
Right. They have to go out and perform at peak athletic capacity against a New Orleans team that might have been sitting at home resting for 3 days.
That's insane when you spell it out like that.
That is not just a scheduling quirk. It is a scientifically proven recipe for soft tissue injuries. It is the exact scenario where a hamstring pulls or a groin tears.
So in the 68-game remix, because you have extended the timeline and removed 14 games worth of inventory, you finally have the breathing room in the calendar to mathematically eliminate those brutal scheduling clusters.
Exactly. The math finally works.
You eliminate the 4 games and 5-night stretches.
Mm-hmm.
You remove the back-to-backs that require cross-country flights. You build the schedule with intention, ensuring adequate recovery time between contests.
And that changes everything for the medical staffs.
But the analysis goes even further than just fixing the logistical calendar.
Mm-hmm.
It introduces this massive paradigm shift regarding player accountability.
And this might be the most fascinating part of the entire proposal.
It really is. It's arguably the most crucial psychological component of the remix.
Definitely.
The source notes the current rules the league implemented, which require players to participate in a minimum of 65 games to be eligible for major end-of-season awards.
Right. The MVP, All-NBA teams, Defensive Player of the Year.
Exactly. In our current 82-game reality, That 65-game threshold is just a benchmark. It is a goal to strive for.
It implicitly allows a player to miss 17 games, which is basically 20% of the season, and still be considered for the highest honors in the sport.
But in this new remixed reality, if the season itself is shortened to, say, 68 games, that 65-game standard fundamentally changes its entire psychological meaning.
It shifts entirely.
Because if you only have 68 games, playing 65 isn't just a benchmark anymore. It becomes the absolute baseline expectation.
The mantra of the remix, as the analysis puts it, becomes, if you're healthy, you play.
Okay, but I have to challenge this premise a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Because this feels like we might be assuming way too much good faith from the players and teams. Let's really pressure test this.
Okay.
If we structurally shorten the season and give them more rest, how do we actually guarantee that players won't just start resting in a 68-game season too?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. Because load management isn't just a scheduling reaction anymore. It has become deeply ingrained in the culture of the sport over the last decade. Players have been conditioned to believe that preservation is more important than participation.
They've been taught to optimize for the playoffs.
Exactly. So does simply changing the mathematical structure of the schedule organically create that accountability? Or does it require a massive, painful culture shift from the players, the agents, and the medical staffs?
It is a totally valid skepticism. I mean, we've seen a decade of behavioral conditioning pushing players toward rest.
Right.
But the underlying argument of this proposal is that structure dictates culture.
Structure dictates culture.
Yes. Right now, the team medical staffs have hard mathematical proof that the 82-game schedule, with its sleep deprivation and its brutal back-to-backs, inherently causes injury.
The data proves it.
Exactly. Their job is to protect the asset. A $200 million player is an asset.
Sure.
So they proactively rest players. The flawed structure of the schedule is their alibi. It is the absolute perfect excuse for a superstar to sit out a nationally televised game on a Tuesday.
Ah, I see. So the remix completely removes the alibi.
Precisely. When you remove the sheer physical impossibility of the schedule, you force accountability to naturally follow.
Because they can't point to the schedule and say it's unsafe.
Yeah. Exactly. If there are no back-to-backs, if there is scientifically adequate rest built into the intended schedule, a medical director can look a superstar in the eye and say, look, there is no physiological or biometric reason for you to sit tonight.
Your sleep data is fine. Your tissue recovery is optimal. You are playing.
Yes. The structural fix empowers and forces the cultural shift. You strip away the excuses, and suddenly, if the Stars are playing 65 out of 68 games, the regular season fundamentally transforms.
The stars are actually present.
The stars are present, the games feel intensely meaningful, and the regular season regains the weight and prestige that it has been bleeding for 15 years.
That is a massive paradigm shift. You're essentially using the math to trap the medical staffs and the players into actually participating.
It's brilliant in its simplicity.
And if you achieve that, if you fix the schedule, balance the finances so the owners and players are made whole, and secure the nightly availability of the stars, you suddenly have a highly reliable premium product.
You fix the core issue.
But the proposal doesn't stop there, which I love. Once you have a reliable product, you have a new opportunity. How do you package that product for the fan?
Right, how do you market it?
Exactly. The text pivots to the final piece of the puzzle. Elevating the actual entertainment experience for you, the viewer, beyond just the schedule itself.
And this is where the remix moves from being a strictly logistical, mathematical fix to a truly visionary one.
Because it's about the fan experience.
Right. If you genuinely want to elevate the fan experience, you don't stop at simply rearranging the dates on a spreadsheet. You use the breathing room created by the shorter season to actively enhance the moments and events around the schedule.
It's about a philosophical shift in how the league presents itself, treating the season less like a grueling, endless marathon of meaningless games that are constantly droning on in the background of your life.
Which is how it feels now.
And more like a carefully curated series of distinct, hyped events.
Yeah.
And the first concrete example they give is completely overhauling All-Star Weekend. Currently, it's a frantic 3-day sprint. They propose turning it into a true All-Star Week.
This is a brilliant concept that leverages the extra time in a condensed schedule.
How so?
Well, currently, All-Star Weekend often feels like a disjointed, rushed exhibition. Players fly in on Friday, they do a million corporate appearances, they sleepwalk through a game on Sunday, and they fly out.
Yeah, the game itself is usually pretty unwatchable.
Exactly. But a full All-Star Week, that changes the dynamic entirely. It creates an immersive cultural experience. It becomes something that truly belongs to the host city.
Kind of like how the Super Bowl takes over a city for a whole week.
Exactly like the Super Bowl. It's not just a single meaningless exhibition game. It becomes a festival of basketball with concerts, fan activations, and community events.
That sounds amazing for the local fans.
It is. And furthermore, by expanding it to a full week, it gives the players who aren't participating in the game a legitimate, extended physical and mental break right in the middle of the season.
Oh, right. So they get an actual vacation.
Yes, which reinforces the health pillar we discussed earlier. And for the fans, they can feel the energy and celebration of the sport beyond just the broadcast of a single low-effort exhibition.
Okay, I love that. And then the proposal talks about leaning heavily into rivalry matchups throughout the season and creating what they call windows in the schedule, where the league feels completely unified.
The unified windows concept.
Yes. This concept is fascinating to me. The idea that you orchestrate moments in the calendar where every game matters at the same time.
Think about what that does to the rhythm and psychology of the fan experience.
Because right now it's super disjointed.
Highly decentralized and scattered. You have 2 games on a Monday, 7 games on a Tuesday, 4 on a Wednesday, all tipping off at different times with wildly varying levels of importance to the standings.
It's very hard to follow the narrative of the league on a nightly basis unless you are like a diehard fanatic.
Exactly, it's too much noise. But what if, in a slightly condensed, intentional schedule, the league could carve out specific windows?
Like what?
Imagine a dedicated rivalry week in January, or a setup where every single Saturday night features 5 high-stakes, regionally significant matchups happening simultaneously.
Okay, so let me ask you about the mechanics of being a fan in that scenario.
Sure.
If we create these unified windows, does that essentially mean the league is artificially creating mini playoff atmospheres in the dead of winter?
Essentially, yes.
Because the playoffs were so compelling,
Yeah.
precisely because everyone is watching the same high-stakes narrative unfold at the exact same time.
Yeah.
How does importing that into January change the daily rhythm of being a basketball fan?
It changes it entirely from passive consumption to active communal consumption.
There's that active viewing again.
Exactly. Right now, a random Wednesday night game between 2 mid-tier teams in January simply does not feel like an event. You aren't going to call your friends and go to a sports bar to watch it.
No way.
But if you know that this specific week in January is the league's unified rivalry window, and every single game on the slate is heavily weighted for the standings, and the entire media apparatus is focused on it.
Suddenly you have appointment viewing.
Yes. It concentrates the fandom. You are strategically recreating the urgency, the tribalism, and the communal viewing habits of the playoffs, but you are injecting it throughout the regular season.
It forces the regular season to actually matter.
Yes.
Which circles all the way back to the core problem we started with. Fans right now don't feel like the regular season matters because the stars aren't playing and the games are too diluted.
Right.
The remix fixes the availability of the stars by adjusting the schedule and removing the medical alibi, and then it packages those highly available stars into curated, deeply meaningful events.
Exactly. And importantly, it proves that this is a solvable puzzle.
It's not hopeless.
Not at all. It proves that the NBA doesn't have a fundamental talent problem. The players are incredible.
Best in the world.
And it doesn't have an entertainment problem. Basketball is an inherently thrilling sport.
Locally.
It has a structural problem. The architecture of the season is working against the product. But architecture can be redesigned. Structure can be fixed.
Wow. We have covered a massive amount of ground today, digging deep into the physiological, financial, and psychological mechanics of the sport.
It's a lot to process.
It really is. The modern NBA is clearly stuck in a crisis of player availability, which has led to a diluted, untrusted regular season.
The understudy problem.
Exactly. And we've seen that retreating to the extremes simply does not work. The 82-game tradition is a biological impossibility at the modern pace of play. It's physically breaking the product and alienating the fans.
Health and fans suffer.
Right. But the 60-game fantasy is equally disastrous. It would financially break the league, violently slashing local revenues, disrupting broadcast contracts, and collapsing the entire business ecosystem that supports the sport.
Money and history suffer.
Exactly. So the only viable path forward is the 65 to 70 game remix. It represents the ultimate surgical middle ground.
The pruning of the tree.
Yes, it prunes just enough games from the calendar to eliminate the physiological nightmare of back-to-backs and sleep deprivation, ensuring that the game's brightest stars are actually healthy enough to take the floor.
Right.
But crucially, it retains enough inventory to respect the massive financial ecosystem, satisfying broadcast partners, and ensuring long-term business stability.
Balancing the books.
And by creating that optimized structure, it completely removes the medical excuse for resting, demanding genuine accountability from the stars.
If you're healthy, you play.
And finally, it takes that newly stabilized, high-quality, reliable product and curates a premium, event-driven experience for the fans through innovations like a unified, citywide All-Star Week and highly concentrated, high-stakes rivalry windows.
It's the total package. The ultimate takeaway from this analysis is that the survival of massive sports leagues relies entirely on balance.
Balance is everything.
It is. The authors beautifully summarize the thesis. They say, this isn't about proving that 60 games is right or that 82 games is wrong.
Okay.
The best systems don't ignore competing interests. They balance them.
That's a great quote.
Health matters. Money matters. History matters. And above all, fans matter.
Absolutely.
The league does not have to be trapped in a false choice between having more basketball or having better basketball. It just needs the courage to build a remixed version of itself where it can sustainably deliver both.
That is incredibly well said. So we'll leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive.
Something to think about.
Exactly. If massive sports leagues begin to realize that sheer volume is actually hurting their brand,
No.
and they successfully transition to curating these less is more schedules where the fat is trimmed away and every single game on the calendar is treated as a premium, high-stakes, must-see event,
Yeah,
how will that fundamentally alter the landscape of our daily media consumption?
that's a big question.
It is. If we no longer have endless low-stakes games serving as basically background noise in our living rooms every single night of the week, does our overall sports fandom become deeper and more passionate?
Because every game matters.
Right? Or does it just become hyper-concentrated into shorter bursts of attention, leaving a void in our daily routines? It's really something to think about the next time you look at a ticket in your hand, hoping you actually get to see the star and not just the understudy.